Welcome to the Church Security Answer Man video blog, where it's all about ministry safety, security, and making a difference for people. And now, your host, a former law enforcement officer, criminal justice trainer, and security expert, Captain Joe Puckett.
Well, hello to everyone. I appreciate the fact that you're joining me today. I want to welcome you to the discussion. I want to welcome you to our ministry security community here, if you will. And, I'm so happy that you're joining me today, so happy that you're watching. And I want to welcome you to the Church Security Answer Man, both the podcast, our audio show, and our video show online. We're trying this new this year for our season 4. We're going to try to do both the audio and the video. We've had so many requests for both, so we're still going to be doing the podcast, but you can also come on over to the website, to churchsecurityanswerman.com, and find the video podcast, our video cast there, our video blog, and you can also find us on YouTube as well. So this is season 4, episode 1. So much stuff to talk about, especially following that terrible Texas church shooting that we've had recently. So time to get back into the discussion, and certainly I want to give you my takes, my opinions on what I think about this situation, but more just continue our discussion. That's what I really want to do here, is keep continuing that discussion. So whether you're listening to the podcast, you're driving a truck, mowing the lawn, or you're laying on a beach somewhere, or you're watching us from your tablet, laptop, desk computer, whatever that looks like, I just want to welcome you here and thank you for joining us. And I want to thank you for what you do, looking at ministry security for your people, for your ministry, whatever that looks like. I'm glad, and I want to thank you, and I know your people appreciate the work that you do so that they can try to feel somewhat confident. So today we're going to discuss, what do we do now? Following that terrible shooting that we started mentioning, I want to really get to talking about what should we be focused on, what should we be doing, and kind of some general thoughts as we kick off this season. And so I want to just, dig into some of that stuff. It doesn't matter, for our discussions here today, you're not going to hear me talk about verses or what I think as far as why we need church security or where it's got its biblical foundation. You're not going to hear me talk about that stuff. I'm going to leave that up to somebody else to talk about. And what I'm here to talk about is, after that, once you decide, or if you're exploring that concept, or maybe you're not alone in their struggles with maybe trying to discuss with leaders that we should do something in our ministry. So that's what this platform is here for. That's what I'm here to organize for you. So, and I'm certainly going to interject my opinions based on my law enforcement experience, those kind of things, and my studies, that kind of stuff. And that's what it is. It's not legal advice. It's that I'm giving you some opinions based on that experience. So, and I hope you find value in that. And I'm not egotistical about it. I don't know everything. I'm just here to offer up some opinions, and I hope you put that together with other things. There's lots of other great people out there doing training and some live seminars, some online type stuff, newsletters that you can get. And I hope to get to talking about some of those this season. And so I hope my information, the things that we talk about here, just kind of blend with those kind of things. So so it really doesn't matter what ministry you're in, what denomination. I don't care about that kind of stuff. What I want to talk about is your building, your people, your planning, that kind of stuff. And that's the one thing we all have in common, is those types of things and the security issues relative to those kinds of issues. So what I want to talk about today is where some of us may be after that shocking incident at Sutherland Springs First Baptist Church that just happened just a few weeks ago prior to this recording, but you may be listening to this years from now or months from now. And so, we'll certainly get to that discussion and in the next couple of episodes coming up. I want to analyze that, but we're still trying to, my team and I are still trying to pick and choose through what we're reading, what we're seeing, that kind of thing, because obviously we're not there, and we're broadcasting and headquartered on the West Coast. So we're digging through that, and we're going to analyze what we see, and just for some discussions, not to pick on anybody, because I am not about that. And so what we're going to do, though, is talk about what we know and how it might relate to you and I getting better prepared, if you will. So we're going to analyze that incident in an upcoming session. I am hearing a lot from a lot of people over the internet. I'm getting a high amount of emails and notes sent to me via Facebook, those kind of things, of people kind of somewhat going into a bit of a panic, after this incident, which I can definitely understand that. What are we supposed to do? What are we going to do? People are struggling with their leadership over having guns in the ministry, and some leaders are still fighting the issue. So there's a bit of stress going on out there relative to that kind of thing. So, relative to this shooting, and I definitely understand it. And, I understand the conflict. So I definitely see those kind of things. As I'll mention a little bit later, I understand that. It's foreign to a lot of our leaders. They don't teach security and police concepts in seminary or in our formal leadership trainings for church ministries, for religion. So I definitely understand where this is all of a sudden being put on people who have no idea, who are fearful of it. And like I'm going to mention later, just be like asking me to come and preach at your church this Sunday. It would be like, what? So for me, that would not be a norm, and that would be something that would strike fear in me and that kind of thing. So I can speak. I teach all over a good half of the country in doing different seminars, but, delivering a message to your people would not be on this coming Saturday or Sunday, would not be something that I would look forward to at this point in my life. So I'm hearing about a lot of these kind of things, and I am definitely, I want to make sure that even in the middle of this stress and these kind of things, I am not an alarmist. So I do believe we need to be doing something. We do need to get prepared, but I'm not at all an alarmist in these situations. So, if you do not have a plan or have someone on site with a gun, when and if an active shooter were to show up, the evidence is clearly there these days that it's a bad situation. You have people that are easy victims, easy targets, as we talk about, sitting ducks, and no one to defend them. And so that we can go back several years and we have examples where that is not a good idea. So I think that we do have to be addressing it at this point, being afraid of it, being afraid of asking some people to strap their guns on and come into church. Hey, I definitely understand that, and I'm against that. I'm all about concealment. I'm all about being quiet about this stuff, but having a plan for it. So we got to be addressing it, and we got to look realistically at what's facing our ministries. And I want to say there's a whole lot of other things that are probably more important to be looking at addressing than the active shooter at this point. We got to get a plan for it, but we also maybe kind of have to warm up to it. That's a little bit of my thought. And there's probably other things you and I need to be getting prepared for that are more likely than an active shooter incident. So violence is not likely to come to your church. I say that all the time because statistically, it's not likely to come to your church. I can cite one study, one of the best studies I can find from the Hartford Institute. It was based on the Religious Congregations Membership Study that tells us that there's over 350,000 religious congregations in the United States. That's a lot. And those, some of those are no doubt people having studies in their homes and schools, gymnasiums, that are changed to purposes for the weekends, and then some certainly formal churches. So if you look at that, how often do we have the violence? And I have some great friends out there who really focus on the violent incidents that happen at churches. And I definitely see some of those as being very important for us to discuss, but I'm not in favor of looking at the violent incidents where somebody is shot out in front of the church on a Tuesday morning at 2 a.m. That kind of stuff is lumped into these statistics, and I do have some folks out there that I'm aware of that talk about those are important statistics, but realistically, you and I are never going to have the resources in most of our ministries to worry about Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the morning. We got to focus during our ministry times, and so I'm more focused on what is going on during those times rather than a lot of these other death statistics and those kind of things. So I'm talking about, estimated numbers of churches, but my point is that, with the many active shooter incidents that occur each year in the United States, some that are specifically in churches, with 350,000 plus churches out there, statistically, it's still not going to come to your place. But a great chance it's not going to happen. But you and I got to be prepared if it does, because we have these kind of incidents where 50% of the people in attendance at church are shot and or killed. And that's just too high of a number. And that also multiplies itself when other people see how much media time and how big of a kind of a positive spin that's put on this situation. It's going to attract more people that are having bad mental health issues, those kind of things, to do more of this. So we have to look at it. If you don't have a plan, it's bad for your people. And so we got to be working on some sort of plan. Do we just start there this week, planning for that? I don't think we can do that. I think we got to work on our team. We got to work on our concepts, and we can work towards that goal. But I think maybe we have to start, and really think realistically. So, so I think definitely the days of burying our heads in the sand, I've definitely struggled with ministry leaders over the last few years, and heard from a lot of people that are struggling with their leaders of like, it's not going to happen here. Well, it's not going to happen here. We're a small town. We're a small church. And I think those days are gone. I think that your head is buried in the sand, or you're just plain ignoring it because you're fearful or whatever. And I'm certainly not going to get into theological issues, those kind of things. I can't argue those. I'll just be upfront. I can argue all kinds of use of force and security issues and enforcement issues. I can argue that stuff a lot, but theological arguments, I definitely can't keep up on that part. But I do want to say, I've heard those excuses, but we've got, just in our recent past, the past couple of years, I can name 3. You've got Selma, Alabama, a small church, and even the pastor, the minister of that church, after that shooting incident, he had no plans. He thought nothing's going to happen here. And then it happened. A shooting broke out in the front of the church, right in front of him. And he had to jump in. And so after the incident, he survived the incident. But after that incident, he said, man, we are going to do whatever we can now. We're going to get security cameras. We're going to do whatever we can. And so he's now a believer that stuff can even come to a small town. We've got a pastor, a year and a half ago before this recording, that was shot in the parking lot as he's leaving church in a small northern community in northern Idaho. Small, what would be semi-rural or very rural to some of us, a very small area. And then you can't argue with the Sutherland Springs, Texas. You're talking about a town of what I'm told currently is less than 1,000 people. And so it's a very small town. So we can't ignore it anymore as far as I'm concerned. That argument's gone. I'll continue to do that. I'll continue to try to provide information for us to make arguments, but I really think it's getting kind of silly if we're still making that argument that it can't come to our small church. So now the discussion, though, I think the proper discussion is, what can we afford to do? What can we legally do? What are we capable of doing based on our congregation and our monies? Some communities can hire an off-duty police officer for a few hours during their major services, and they do. You can hire security guards, an armed security guard that could stand out front, those kind of things, and some churches do. But if you don't have the funds for it, then what's the next step? Do you have somebody in your congregation who is law enforcement or retired military or those kind of things? Or, do you have somebody with a good head on their shoulders that he or she carries a concealed weapon, and so you're going to rely on them. So that's the kind of, and I'm not real comfortable with that, because then we get into all the, how long's it been since you've shot that gun? How good are you with it? All of those kind of things. So, but I do think we need to be having the discussion of these days of what can we do. If you're not able to do anything to deal with this possibility of violence, it's a slim possibility. If you don't have the resources, then I see those arguments. But I do believe the evidence is there that you and I should be addressing this. And because there's lots of evidence, there's lots of examples for us that tell us you and I need to do something about that 2 minutes. And it may be longer, but when a gunman breaks into a church or pulls out his weapon and begins firing, a couple of minutes can be a long time when it comes to vulnerable people in that church that can't defend themselves. So we need to think about what we can do during that couple of minutes. By the way, if we are doing something then that visible security or presence might even be enough to stop those folks. I would say, and I'm just talking in general here, we'll get into more detail later, but in general, I think if you have somebody standing at the doorway or walking around out front that has some resemblance of paying attention to what's going on, you might deter some of these folks that just walk in and start blasting kind of thing. So if we have some visibility, someone appears to be, on watch, on guard, then I think that might be the reasonable start right now. We don't have anybody with guns. I don't want to bring guns in. But we got to do something. So we got to be thinking about these kind of alternatives. So, and if we can just even simply have somebody that's beginning to be a security team or a safety team, or that's watching out what's going on. And I'm going to talk here in a minute where there's, I think, actually even more real purposes for those of actual things that are probably going to occur to your ministry and probably already have. And so, but I do like that idea of having some kind of presence, somebody that looks like they're on watch at the doorway, out in the sidewalk, out in front, in the parking lot, those kind of things. I think those things are important. I'm really not even concerned if these people are armed, because some of these folks that are scoping things out ahead of time, if they were contemplating to victimize your people or become violent, I don't think they're going to necessarily know the difference. They're just going to see somebody out there at the entrance walking around in front of the building, in front of the parking lot, and that may be just enough to deter them. And that's what I'm looking at, deter them from attacking or committing a crime or those kind of things. And I think it would definitely help on some of the lower level type items that we're talking about, certainly. So, and I think, one of the other things I need to mention in this is I think building a network within our ministries and community, might also be a good thing, a good step in the right direction. So find ways to train your ministry leaders to be on the lookout for problems. You've got your youth, your children's, you got your adult ministries, you got your worship ministries, whatever that looks like for your folks. I think throwing little articles out there or little 5-minute discussions with them at a staff meeting, or provide them some material to conduct a quick little 5-minute security discussion at a staff meeting. I think that stuff is great. And that kind of begins to get them looking and helping you. Maybe there's just one or two of you that are kind of security type folks. Get those folks to, start being your lookout, your eyes and ears. And realistically, you may need them to help you. But telling you about different situations and things going on, that's a great deal if you've got them as eyes and ears for you to help you with these different situations. And don't forget about your community members or law enforcement officers. Connect with those folks as well. There's important people near your church. As I understand it, the Texas shooting that just occurred recently, the people in the gas station across the street were starting to pay attention. They were starting to see things, and a couple of neighbors to the church, that kind of thing. And so if you've got a business across the street or a gas station or a restaurant, start talking, ask those folks, befriend them. And I'm sure you probably already are, talk to them, those that are working on ministry times, during your ministry times, ask them to keep a watch out if things don't look right, to have them call the police or call you and alert you or something. Set up communication with them if something doesn't look right. If nothing else, have them call in 911 right away. And, you might even have law enforcement people in your church. Ask their thoughts, get their input, and you may get them to be part of the team kind of thing. I do want to, and you may just simply ask them who you can contact at the local department, or go out and make some contacts and get some input from them and kind of, interact with them and get their input on your security and that kind of stuff. And it can also be part of your ministry. You can minister to those folks as you're talking to them as well, so depending on how that interaction goes. So I do want to make sure and mention one thing on behalf of officers, because this is one thing people don't realize sometimes, and that is, and I'm always mentioning this, but if you do try to recruit police officers or law enforcement officers and sometimes firefighters and other folks from your ministry, they attend church already, I want to make sure you know that you may see hesitation with them or get hesitation. And frankly, that may be their family time, so they don't want to do those kind of things, and I understand that. And certainly we should cut them that slack. Maybe they can just give you some input and that's enough, or put you in contact with somebody else at the department. But I do want to mention that some of these departments, in fact, many will require the approval of their chief or their boss before they can be part of an official security team at church, those kind of things. So it's part of what they call, some of them call it indemnification kind of thing. So make sure you know that there may be some hesitation there, and don't hold that against them. It's part of a process if they were to be officially part of a security team or something like that. So, and finally for this episode, I recommend that we look at what is likely to happen. What is likely to happen, and get prepared for that. I see that as maybe a way to head off a lot of these problems as well. What is statistically likely to happen at your ministry or your church? It's people trying to victimize your children. We need to be protecting our children. People entering services to interrupt, just to stand up and scream out a different message than you have, or interrupt things. People committing petty crimes, inside, stealing purses or something like that. There's all kinds of those kind of petty crimes going on across our nation during church services. And how many of you have had a break into cars in the parking lot during a service? Many folks, as I do my live seminars, many people are raising their hands saying, yes, they've had those break-ins. So, so here's kind of what I'm thinking is those things are statistically more likely to happen. We have to move in the direction, I think, these days of doing something about the active shooter, having somebody there that can interact with that shooter for that couple of minutes till help arrives. But let's look at this. On the way to that process, I recommend that maybe you look at your security team more as a safety team. Let's start this in, steps, baby steps. So we start a safety team, and that safety team's going to watch the perimeter, walk around the parking lot, watch out for the kids, and watch out for people that might be trying to steal things, that kind of thing. And then, our leaders might be a little bit more accepting to that concept. And so then maybe in 6 months or 3 or 4 months, then we start, once we're doing well and we've trained them a little bit, now we go to our leaders and say, hey, how about if we now start training about how to deal with a weapon situation, and maybe we do some practice shooting and have people see if, let's take them out for a barbecue to the range or wherever we might go shoot, and let's see how well they shoot, and we'll pick some armed folks from that. If we stair step like that and start building a team for it, it's beneficial in a couple of ways, is my thought. One, we are now starting to take care of some of the things that are statistically likely to happen and probably have already happened in the past to our church or our ministry. And we're starting to build a team, and we're starting to be able to evaluate people and look at how good their head is on their shoulders and how well they make decisions under pressure and that kind of stuff. And then we can start to see how do they shoot and that kind of thing. I see that as maybe a lot more beneficial because we're moving in that direction of getting prepared for an active shooter. We're starting to make our people feel better because we're watching out for them, and we're starting to do more as far as the safety, security concept. And I'm here to tell you that I do think that a lot of our struggles are that we have people that are standing up, and going to our leaders and talking about, we got to carry guns. And and again, I'm going back to that could be very scary to some of your ministry leaders. And I don't blame them at all for that. I'm back to the fact that, it's a foreign concept to them. It's like coming to me and saying, hey, Joe, can you preach this Sunday at church? It'd be like, are you kidding me? Are you nuts? It's like it's a foreign concept to me. So, so I think we have to have baby steps sometimes with our leaders. And I see some of this stuff going on. I want to call it knee-jerk, but it's not knee-jerk because you and I do have to be looking at this gun stuff. We do have to be looking at the violence. And so, but, maybe we take baby steps and maybe we start that safety team and they do some of the basic stuff and get trained on some verbal skills and that kind of stuff. And then we work on, let's add guns to that team who's doing a great job and they're communicating well and dealing with difficult people well. Then maybe we do that, and I know some of you are fortunate, and I use that term, not necessarily in a great way, but some of you have leaders who are okay to this concept. They're saying, yeah, we got to do something. And I'm good with that. That's great for you. And I know some leaders, I did some audits here a while back in the Texas regions of some churches, and I met with some leaders who were like, hey, I'm the minister here, and I'm the preacher, and I'm packing. I'm carrying a gun when I'm up there preaching. So, hey, that's great. That's awesome. So, my caution to you is after these big events, after this one, and it's tragic. I don't want to minimize it, and I'm not saying anything bad about those folks. They are sitting in the same position as many of those 350,000 churches across our nation are sitting. Same position. So I'm not critical of them at all. I've heard some criticism of the church, and my church would handle it better than that church or that kind of stuff. And I say, hush on that kind of stuff. I don't like that. We can each individually do better, and if we practice those kind of things. But realistically, respectfully, this is a great learning opportunity for us. So I am not a dogging these folks in Texas or Selma, Alabama, or Idaho, any of these groups that end up becoming victims of this violent stuff. So, but I do want to say, we're moving in that direction. We got to be thinking about it. But I think maybe the knee-jerk stuff or the quick, we got to do something now, maybe still needs to be a slow and steady approach. Maybe we work on, we got to do something. And maybe we move in that direction to protect our people, but maybe we're working on our safety teams and our foundation a little bit. And maybe we hire a security guard until we can work on getting some of our people trained and see how they shoot. I mean, asking somebody to bring their gun to church and you don't even know if they've shot that gun in the last 5 or 10 years. And I'll bet you there's a good chance they have not. And so we got to take this stuff slow and steady, but we got to be doing something. That is definitely my recommendation is our head in the sands, that day's got to be gone. You got to be at least thinking about what can we start doing and what should we be doing within our abilities. And if we don't have those abilities and capabilities, we should probably be looking at resources to either find it or train some of our key folks to be doing that kind of stuff. And it doesn't have to be an elaborate plan. It's just, I think, is a matter of having somebody that can take care of themselves and handle themselves, maybe standing on the walkway right out front during each of our main services, that kind of stuff that's visible. And so slow and steady, that's my advice to you, that we're thinking about it and we're moving ahead slow and steady. So that's it for this edition of the Church Security Answer Man. I am so happy that you joined me. And joined my team here. My hope is that you learn from our information and improve our efforts to protect our leaders, our people, and our ministries. That's my hope, is just maybe something a little that we talk about here helps take your ministry to another level or get you thinking about and exploring with other groups some other items. So don't forget, there's more information all day, every day at churchsecurityanswerman.com, at our website. That's churchsecurityanswerman.com. And we're continuing to expand that. Our team has been split in many directions over the years, but we definitely see that there's more. We've got to get focused on this more ourselves, as well as you've got to get more focused on this. So we're going to work to expand that page, those kind of things, more resources for you. And, I'm also available. Send us a note to, you can send a note to me directly to captainjoepuckett@gmail.com. And you should also find other places on our website where you can send a note to me. And so those are some of the best ways to get a hold of me if you have a question. And I'll do my best to get back with you, answer those kind of things. We also have a Facebook page, which we put what news we see, those kind of things that we think are pertinent to this kind of stuff. We put that kind of stuff on the page. And so that's available to you. And I certainly encourage you to share those kind of things with your other team members, your leaders, those kind of things, so that we're talking about this stuff. That's the important thing. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate you. I look forward to the next time that we can get together. And I hope you have a safe and secure week.
Thanks for watching the Church Security Answer Man video blog. Get more by joining us anytime at churchsecurityanswerman.com.